Hi, everybody. Welcome Facebook, welcome YouTube, welcome LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you're watching from. Thank you so much for joining myself and Kevin. Kevin is the owner of Resumedics. We're going to hear a lot about what he does, and he's also a contractor for LinkedIn. So there's tons of information that he's going to be giving out today in terms of rebranding yourself if you need to, re-entering the workforce, or just changing jobs, changing careers, whatever it is that you are doing, or even just polishing up what you have if you have no intention of moving your job or your career right now. Please send us your comments, your questions. Just go ahead and type them into the comment box of whatever method you are watching this on. We will get to them at the end. You guys, also, it's 9/11 today, so we want to take time to just remember those who were lost in the attacks 19 years ago, those who were the first responders who gave their lives, those who are without their loved ones today, and every day. All of our lives were rerouted, because of that day. So we want to just take time to remember them, to let us, give our thoughts, give our prayers to those who were most impacted and affected by that. May we never forget what happened this day, 19 years ago. Without further ado, I want to introduce Kevin. Kevin, Kevin, let me just turn it on over to you. I want you to please tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into all of the information, the knowledge, and the experience that you carry in terms of personal branding, of how to market yourself, and all of that. Let's hear about you. Like, how did you get involved in this? Why did you start this? Talk to us about your military career, if you could, for just a minute.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me on, Angel, and thanks again for sending a shout out to those who have sacrificed their lives. And yes, today's a day that we will never forget. And thank you again for starting off with that. Resumedics, kind of birthed from working and helping individuals for years with their resumes. And it used to be kind of a side hustle. And I did it for about 10 years. And then in 2018, I decided one day to just pack my box. And I realized that in order to help people more, I had to spend a lot more time working with individuals and trying to promote my business in a way to where I just, it was more than just, well, I can talk to you in the evening or talk to you in the weekend. When I was in the military, and I got out over 30 years ago, so I'm a bit of a dinosaur these days. I didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't know what I wanted to be. Even when I was discharged, I had the GI Bill, had no idea where I was wanting to go. I just knew that I was wanting to move on with my life. I've always had kind of a passion for writing, but as far as doing anything with it, it probably wasn't until about 10 years ago. I started working with the newspaper and was starting to sell. And then I also started doing some writing for them. And just over time, it just started to morph. And in 2018 is when I officially packed my box and decided to start Resumedics. And it started to just branch out into, from just doing resumes to LinkedIn profiles to what I think now is more important is the career strategy part of it. So as far as, evolving, you start to understand the needs of what people are looking for. And then I just kind of put it all together into a comprehensive service now that offers, with any resume writing, helpful tips, job search, career direction. A lot of times you're putting something together, and even if it's well written, what do you do with it? Where do you go with it? Now what? Do I just throw it up on a job board? Do I, print it off and still try to hand it to somebody? So people were needing help, not just with rewriting it, but again, a pathway for where to send it. How do I know my stuff's aligning with what they're looking for? So by putting together a comprehensive service like that, I found that started to set me apart. Recently in 2020, LinkedIn rolled out a new program for its subscribers. And basically it's resume and career experts. And what the program is that individuals can submit their resumes, and then coaches like myself will critique them and then send them back. So I've been doing that also since 2020, back in March, and I've been doing that a lot as well. So I'm spending a lot of time with individuals, no matter what, their entry level or their executive level, it doesn't matter. So it's definitely keeping me busy these days, in addition to the public speaking and stuff that I do. So.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So that is, yes, that is so much. Talk to me a little bit, if you can, about your, I mean, it sounds like you are super busy, and I know that this is something that is so necessary. Even when we were doing like we did a test run of this interview a few weeks ago. I don't have a LinkedIn profile. I've never had one. And, you were just telling me about the importance of this. And even before we went live right now, you were saying LinkedIn. So to me, I'm not even like very into social media. And so to me, it's just like another social media thing. But what you said to me was, this is actually a self-branding tool. This is a way to set yourself apart in the professional world as opposed to social media. So now you're a consultant for LinkedIn. Can you tell us about how the impact that LinkedIn could have on somebody's career, professional life in general? Even people that we might not think need it, like, for example, active duty military, maybe even military spouses, just anybody who might have been staying at home, and now they're trying to enter into the work field. Maybe they never worked outside of the home before. Can you tell us a little bit about LinkedIn's impact on their opportunities?
Well, as with everything else that's evolved in social media, is really kind of got a foothold in our society. A lot of times people look at Facebook as a way to, get their message out there. But LinkedIn is a little bit different than Facebook, in a sense that you're not going to share your vacation photos. You're not going to announce the birth of a grandchild on your LinkedIn page. Um, it's primarily for individuals who are, working class, business class, and I do want to preface that, depending on what you are doing, if you're working on an assembly line, or in manufacturing, or you're a tradesman, are you going to use LinkedIn very much? No, probably not. But if you are in a situation where you're a project manager, or you're working in engineering, sales, marketing, accounting, there's two kinds of avenues that you can go with a LinkedIn profile. One, obviously, for individuals right now that are looking for work, we still have an unemployment rate today of around 8.5%. Earlier in the year, it was under 4%. So you see a lot of active individuals out there looking for work, seeing what's out there. And, so for those that are, doing that, instead of just putting your information on Indeed, loading up your profile with your work history, your summary, and skill sets is a great way for a recruiter or a hiring manager to go out and look for your information. You can set your profile for recruiters to see your information. But, even if you are in a position where you weren't looking for a job yet, but you were working for a nonprofit organization, or, something where you try to get the message out to let people know what you're doing, LinkedIn is a great tool for online networking, putting posts out there, about your organization or about a volunteer event, something that will position you or your organization in good standing. And community service and volunteer work is a great way to do that. So, though that's kind of a common theme that, individuals could use that for, and Facebook, for really kind of also making you a subject matter expert in something. But there's a lot of different things I can go into about how it can help a professional just talk more about what it is that they're doing, and of course the job search element, which is what a lot of people usually, when they're working on their page and getting it all pretty, it's usually because they're out looking for another job. So you also got to be careful with that too. So
So let's kind of break that down then. Can you first of all start by telling us a little bit more about your role with LinkedIn? Because you are a contractor with them, so you help people, you're a consultant, I'm sorry, you help people kind of make their LinkedIn profile the most marketable, right? The most appealing. You take a look at what they have done, all of their experiences, make sure that it's worded correctly, that it's appealing to the client, the potential employer of the person who's looking to get hired. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect first, and then let's go into maybe kind of, do you have like a top like 3 things or something like that that need to be in your profile? Maybe somebody has one, but they don't have those things. Or maybe somebody's like me who doesn't have one at all, but they want to get one.
Yep. So when I'm working on a resume, usually with most of my programs I'm doing, if I'm updating their resume and rewriting it, I'm always going into their profile and I'm updating that as well. The one thing that hiring managers want to see is if they're looking at a resume, they're looking at a profile, they do want to see some kind of similarity. Last thing they want to see is, here's a profile, here's work history and everything on it, here's a resume and it's got completely different stuff on it. Really jams up a recruiter or a hiring manager. So you really want to make sure that and again, it doesn't have to be verbatim off of your resume. And a lot of people, discourage the practice of just copying and pasting your resume onto your profile verbatim. I like to kind of write them in first person with the profiles. But the thing to remember with LinkedIn too, and why I do like to take probably 95% of what's on the resume and put it in the profile, is because of the algorithms that LinkedIn uses. And also too, when individuals are being searched or somebody's out there looking for a candidate, they set these algorithms and their filters to try to find individuals as well. So if you have it set up the right way, and I'll talk about that in a second, you'll find that you'll get more people looking at your profile because you've got more relevant stuff on it. So what you really want to have first and foremost is a good professional headshot. I get individuals out there that have vacation photos of their head, or save that for Facebook. You want to have, it doesn't have to be anything like professionally done, but at least something that's professional looking, a nice headshot. Just try to make it not too grainy or anything like that. A background photo behind your headshot. A lot of times individuals, they don't do that. They have that standard blue background that has nothing on it. Your background photo should be reflective now of what you do. So if you're a project manager, there's a lot of different photos and things out there that you could put that illustrate who you are professionally, project management or accounting or marketing or something like that. If you're more creative, the technology one I like to play around with really well because there's some cool stuff out there also. A strong summary, again, that outlines who you are, your capabilities, along with the skill sets underneath it. I like to do that and put a few of those in there right at the top because individuals generally read from the top down to the bottom. So by having a good summary in there, which is what you should have on your resume anyway, that's where you're going to capture the most people because that's the first thing that they look at. So you want to make sure that that's strong. And then when you start getting into your work history again, make sure that you fill it all out. Is it full time? Is it part time? What town is it in? Again, your resume is going to obviously have most of that information that's on there, and that's okay. That's okay because sometimes they might not even look at the resume. They might just look at the profile, not even download anything else. So I always think it's important, and your work history is generally not going to change. It is what it is as far as that goes. The 50 skill sets are very important as well because out of the 50, now you're putting the things on there that are relevant to what individuals are looking for. It's Microsoft Office, including the PowerPoint, Excel, Word, virtual meetings, Zoom. But a lot of your soft skills, a lot of your hard skills, and again, the technology tools can all go in there. You get up to 50, so you got to be a little selective. And the other thing that I like, and I really encourage individuals to do this, is they have a page on your profile where you can put links. So if you've done something noteworthy, worthwhile, even if it's community work, volunteer work, whatever, put those links on there. again, there's no charge for it, and it really sets you apart as somebody who's, committed to whatever it is that you were doing. And again, I like to use that word, SME, subject matter expert. Um, but the video links and just PDF files of things that you've done. Some individuals even put articles on there or write something that might be relevant and for a business sense, not just to put something out there. But LinkedIn really encourages you to put a pen and article and put it out there. Again, it just lets people know. It gets people more engaged when they look at your page, and you know, you know. And again, I love the word self-branding because you have to be a representative of yourself before you can be a representative of a company or an organization.
Wow, yeah, that is a really good point. That is a really good point. I want to kind of switch gears here if we can and talk about this word that I love, which is returnship. A returnship, because I feel like a lot of people who are watching this might fit into that category. So somebody who's been out of work for a while, or somebody who is trying to, who took time off for whatever reason. Maybe it was planned, maybe it was not planned because, of the times that we live in now. But can you talk about returnship and how you take things and skills that people are doing,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not in a traditional like working sense, but turn those skills that they have been implementing into marketable, brandable skills for an actual company once they're ready to go into or return to work outside of the home.
Well, I got to part with the nasty secret. First of all, I actually got the word. I was watching something on Good Morning America, I think about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I thought, wow, this really stuck. I've never heard the term used since then. So I am kind of borrowing it from them, but it seems to work. With the concept of it, when I started, this was all, of course, obviously pre-COVID, where I would work with individuals who have been in the workforce for a while. They get married, settle down a little bit, have kids, and they're raising their kids. A domestic engineer, hardest job in the world, by the way. And for good 4 or 5 years, a lot of times, and male or female, and not to be gender biased or whatever, whether it's a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. But they may spend 4 or 5 years taking care of a child, and then they go off to school, and then they decide, what, I want to get back into working again. So you know the other thing too is with the military spouses, kind of the same thing. If they've been around, if the spouse has been you know uh, you know 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or even just 4 years. A lot of times with the spouse, with kids, when I was in the military, and we would be deployed, you'd have to have the spouse at home taking care of the kids because you were gone for 6 months. So that weighs on individuals as well, and they want to get back into the workforce as well. And then finally, you've got, of course, things going on with COVID, and you get individuals who've been furloughed, and then it turns into a permanent furlough, and now they find themselves 5 months later, and it's like, well, gee, you know what? I haven't worked in a while. So there's now, I think, 3 different spectrums of a returnship these days that we want to focus on. But when I work with individuals like that, and I worked with a lady not too long ago who was what they call back in the day an ombudsman, somebody that was kind of like a liaison who would kind of act as the intermediary between troops or individual being deployed. And they would kind of act as an intermediary. Well, over time, there were some rules that came up with some companies where they asked about social media, and a lot of these roles, individuals that are here while we're there, they do a lot with Facebook and the postings and things like that. So there's social media management that is a skill for some of them that I use quite a bit, because they were starting to extensively utilize that platform, but they weren't doing it as a job. It was more of a volunteer thing. And the volunteer also with community services and setting up events and things like that. Now you got event coordinating and event management. Again, a lot of this stuff is on a volunteer basis, but the leadership skills that you get, putting together a project, the recruiting aspect of it. These are all transferable skills that you can take, from a role like that into, into a workplace, or turn it into an opportunity to where, you're actually, making some coin off of it, instead of just, being diligent in providing a good service. But, for those that are out there, and they're involved with the public, these are really some of the competencies that I really like to illustrate when I'm helping individuals, put their resumes together. And again, they may not be as extensive as somebody who's been in the workforce for a long time, but, again, the communication aspect and problem solving, project management, and, social media management structure can really build a foundation for a lot of individuals. So.
Yeah, and when we were doing the like pre-interview, you talked about the importance of knowing your skill set and having the confidence to, and you kind of had mentioned it before, you have to be able to market yourself before you can like market somebody else's company, or market the skills that that company has, or whatever. So you spend a lot of time also working on the confidence for your clients, the career strategy, the coaching, to be prepared to step into your dream job, to have the confidence to know that you are meant to be in that place, that you are fully able to handle that job and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that, about why that's so important? And I feel like, especially right now, that's super important, because how else will you how will you stand apart? How will you stand out of the crowd? And you mentioned that there's more people looking for jobs now. So there's more candidates. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of confidence and how that plays a part into finding your dream job?
Well, the confidence factor is probably one of the most critical issues that I deal with, and I know that you deal with this all the time. And I want to just emphasize, first of all, that I tell individuals, I'm not, when you have issues and they involve something in your home, or things that are outside of what you do professionally, then I would refer somebody to a life coach or a wellness coach. As a career coach and a career strategist, um, there are similarities. The confidence level lies in, can I do this? Am I capable of doing this? The job description looks so intimidating. I really want to do this job, but I just don't know if I have enough, skills to do it. So when I work with individuals like that, that's where the alignment comes in. So I might look at their skills, and I'm looking at the roles for jobs that they're interested in. And that's a very important part of it, and work with them on that alignment. Sometimes, you're not going to put a square peg in a round hole, and you don't want to fabricate. But what I love about what I do is, when I have somebody out there that says, man, I don't have the confidence, I don't think I can do this, and I look at their experiences and I go, well, let's take a second here. Let's walk through what they're asking for, what their qualifications are, and what's on here. And by the time I'm done, a lot of times I can identify easily whether, yes, you will be a good fit, or a better fit than you think, or maybe we better just, cash in the chips and go in a different direction. When you are looking at somebody who has been unemployed for a while, and they start to go out and look, and they're starting to get the rejection letters, and for a lot of them, they'll tell me, I never had to worry about this before. I would always do it this way, and I'd always get phone calls, and I'd have no problem getting a job. And I was like, well, when was the last time you had to do that? And, a lot of times it could be 10 years, 15 years. And I tell them, look, the landscape has changed so much since then. You can't do it the way you used to do it. A lot of companies legally can't accept your resume just by just handing it to them. It's got to go through a virtual process, or, their job portal, for legal reasons. But, you're sending things out, and it is more competitive nowadays, and people, it messes with you. You've been so dominant in what you've been doing for so long, and then you find yourself getting rejected. You ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? Was it me? Am I too old? It is a natural element to have these types of worries and doubts. I did too. I've been in a situation when I got out of college and I was putting out resumes, and I couldn't get a job selling AM radio. So I was really, really, really down on myself. I served my country, went to school, used the GI Bill, God, somebody hire me, and it was probably 6 months before I, somebody did. So I get it. It's very frustrating. And I try to tell people too about the patience. Companies nowadays, with everything going on, they might be putting posts out, and more of them are starting to hire again. But don't be surprised if they don't get back to you immediately. And going back to LinkedIn for 1 minute, the one thing I like about that tool is, if you've got a premium edition or you spend the extra $29 a month, a lot of times they'll put the job poster's name out there. So you can actually connect with them and say, hey, did you get my information? I was just following up on it, sent it over about a week or two ago. So, again, a lot of times these days, you don't have that individual. If it's a recruiter, that's your link. But as far as somebody internally, a lot of times on the job post, they don't put a name. So who are you going to follow up with? Back in the day, you had a name of an individual. And in some cases today, you still do have that. But, there's no right answer to try to, talk somebody off the cliff per se when the phone's not ringing. My job is to just, again, look at the resume, see if it's structured properly. And that's why I tell folks nowadays, it's really, really important in a competitive landscape to have a professional look at your stuff. We could spend $50 on a couple of large pizzas. You go on a gambling boat, and take $100, $200 with you, just, think about that for a minute and say, God, if I can have a professional come and look at my stuff, help me out, get my phone ringing again, that's what's really important. And nothing worse than your phone not ringing. That's what's crippling for a lot of individuals. And I'm telling you, from chief operating officers to somebody who's just getting back into the workforce, it doesn't matter what level you are, it messes with you.
That is a really good point, Kevin. And I just want to say, like, sometimes taking another viewpoint on the situation can really help you overcome that. If you're feeling like, the phone isn't ringing and so I'm just not good enough, and you kind of go down that spiral of, rumination that's not healthy and things like that, you're missing the opportunity. There's always an opportunity in every problem that you're facing. That's the beauty of it, right? There at one point wasn't any light bulbs in our house. That was just an opportunity for somebody to come along and invent it. So taking another viewpoint on the situation that you're facing and figuring out, like, what am I missing? What am I missing? Is there something that I could do? Is there a class that I could enroll in? Is there training that I could get? And exactly what you were saying, is there somebody that I could hire to make sure that the things that I do have are so nailed down tightly that somebody could not possibly overlook my resume. Sometimes you have the experience, it's just the way that you're presenting it isn't appropriate for somebody. They're looking for something else. And so what you're saying is so important. And again, like, I love what you said about, like, I could spend $50 on pizzas on Friday night, right? And instead, why don't I invest that into having somebody actually look at my stuff and have this, come back to me, 10,000 fold after I get hired at a job that I love, So exactly what you're saying is so important. I think sometimes too, it's about taking ownership, really. It's like saying, you know what, I need to learn here. There's somebody out there who knows something I don't know, and I need to find that person, hire that person, and develop further, better myself so that I can go into the next level of my life. That is so important. Self-development never stops. Just because you're a CEO, just because you were once, whatever, it doesn't mean that you're done developing as a person, not until you're in the grave. So, I want to talk a little bit about your resources, because you have your own podcast, and you obviously have a LinkedIn profile that people can go look at, and how people can get in contact with you and stuff like that. But talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about how your podcast started. I want to, if you don't mind, talk about the progress as well of your own company, Resumedics, because you that's the growth of it I think is something that is super inspiring. And I would love for you to share that as well if you can. So if you could talk about your podcast and your own company's growth.
Well, I started the Career Maverick podcast back in probably around January. I was always kind of looking for a forum to put information out there that was whimsical. Let's face it, resume writing, LinkedIn profile, and career coaching is pretty dry. So I like to try to put a spin on it and kind of switch things up to make it a little bit more engaging. KRDO, FM 98 out of Colorado Springs picked up on it. We started talking, and by the end of February, we formed a partnership and was putting the show out on krdo.com. And it morphed out of, again, looking at some of the experiences that I had and some of the experiences that I've had people share with me and use that, channel that, and put something out there in a forum that individuals could find amusing, but more importantly, informative. And that was the other thing too, because people pick your brain about this and that. And I tell them, well, just go into the library, go into the Career Maverick, look at the shows that have been on there. Currently, right now, I'm somewhat in syndication until the fall. So I'll be starting up new Career Maverick podcasts in the fall, along with think of it as your new primetime shows. So I'm working on the stuff right now and some ideas for the new season, which I'll be rolling out later this month. And the feedback that I get from individuals from it, and also with COVID, we needed some outlets out there, and that during that time when it started more than ever, individuals were needing a lot of help. So not only was I trying to provide a little bit of a lighthearted spin on a situation that's not lighthearted, but we need some kind of something to uplift us at a time of uncertainty. So that's really kind of how it morphed. And as far as the business itself, again, you start out working on one component, then you start moving into another. What I really want to try to do is not get too inundated with different types of things. I still like to keep the core stuff of my business, which is resume writing, interview tips, career strategy, which is the most important facet of it, and obviously, helping individuals with LinkedIn. But I started getting into the public speaking and working with businesses, working with organizations, and then God, they were actually paying me money to do this. So I'm like, cool. But the work that I've done with colleges, high schools, organizations, and just companies in general has been cool as far as the progression of my business. So that is the other element that I found myself doing, and a lot of it too is also volunteer. So it is always a way to give back. And as somebody who progresses in a company and you get bigger, I started out in Illinois. Then I started out working with LinkedIn as a pro finder and started growing my business to 18 states. And then in 2019, we opened up a second location here in Colorado Springs. So I go from working one market and working with a lot of Caterpillar employees in Peoria, Illinois, to being all over the country now. And the word of mouth, the referral, and the more information you're putting out there, the more eyeballs are seeing it and the more intrigued they are. So they want to find out more about what you can do, how you can help. Does it take a lot of patience and persistence and diligence? It does. I work harder now than I ever did when I was collecting a check from a company. So, but that's cool because, the most important thing is that when you love what you're doing, it's not really work. It's, and you are taking ownership in it. But the fact that you help so many people and, the daily emails that I get from folks and telling me, hey, I got an interview for this job. I never got an interview or a call back for a job like this. They're excited about that. And, at the end of the day, when we all leave this universe, we want to look back and say, what was my contribution? How did I also help people? So, as you grow, I think it's really important to spend some time and share your knowledge with individuals to help them. Because I always believe in karma. If you're doing something good for somebody, it'll come back to you in some way or shape. And, you know, as far as the future goes and what I'll be doing, still looking at some different programs out there to help folks beyond their resume. So we just introduced a service about just a month ago where it's an ongoing service. So even after you've had your resume rewritten and you're sending it out there, a month from now, you might say, hey, I want to take you up on this package and have you just constantly update my resume for the next 6 months. And that's fine, because nowadays you kind of have to tweak it, but a lot of folks don't want to do it. And they find themselves are like, God, you mean to tell me I got to update this for every single job I want to send out there? And it's like, well, kind of, but people don't have the time or just don't want to do it. So we are expanding into providing, services outside of the initial services. So that it helps people. And nowadays, with people shifting in industries, you have to do that. And as far as next year and what's going on, who knows? I do know I'm working with a lot of people in Australia right now, so you never know. Could be global.
Wow, I just love that. That's amazing. While you were talking, I remembered something that whenever I used to work for the government before I became an entrepreneur, I had, regular job that I showed up to. And one of the things and keeping up with a resume was always difficult. And especially, in that setting where it had to be approved by security people before you could send out your resume to other people. But one of the things that I did was I actually scheduled in my calendar every 30 days, every month, to review the things that I did that month and put it in a note, like just in a Word document that it was like a kind of running Word document of like new skills or anything kind of new that I did. That way, whenever I was like ready to sit down and to do my resume, which was really only once a year for me because I was in my job, I didn't really need another resume, but I wanted to keep track of all that stuff. It was easy to keep track of all of the things. So there's some things that people can do to help your job, right? Easier, like keeping track of all the stuff that you're doing, just like every week or every month or whatever. Keep an inventory of the things that you're doing so that, as you learn a new skill, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I remember doing that, but it was like, so insignificant to you, or maybe it was like so far ago that you didn't remember it. But that's actually important stuff for your resume, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, you got a lot of gump and diligence there, because try to get people to in a perfect world to have them kind of itemize this stuff and update their things like that is great. Part of this role and an integral part of what I do is actually extrapolating the information from people. So although I do get some individuals that will say, yeah, I've been updating this accordingly. A lot of this too is based on, are they having to apply internally or externally? Now, internally, it's a very important element, because even though you have to submit the resume and go through the same process as somebody outside of the company, it's still important to keep those kind of good notes if you're applying for those jobs. But when you're looking outside of the company now, in addition to having to keep those notes, depending on how long you've been with an organization, I have to externalize the information. So, they're putting things down and using acronyms that their workplace know, but somebody outside of there might not know what it is. So in addition to, working with individuals to update their information and their work history, it's also making sure that it's translating to a hiring manager or recruiter that can understand it. So there's a lot of interpretation that goes into this as well that I spend a lot of time on. But getting back to what you were saying, Angel, you could, take a year, once a year, and just kind of do a little house cleaning and say, okay, this is what I've been doing. That is a fantastic point, by the way, because not just for a role or responsibility, but I encourage people to any type of achievement, recognition, accomplishment. People say, well, I need to set myself apart from another candidate. Your roles and responsibility aren't going to do that. What's going to make you head and shoulders above a candidate are awards, accomplishments, projects, teams you've been on to provide some kind of continuous or process improvement. If you're a sales rep, you're going to put your numbers in there. Did you make your quota? What did you do with an underperforming territory? If it's in production, how much scrap were you able to, reduce? Your inventory levels, where they need to be. So there's a lot of things out there that the metric side of it that I think, Angel, is a great idea to keep that, because people are so consumed with their daily roles, they don't think about the most important aspect is what type of contribution or noteworthy accomplishment did you do in this role? And a lot of times you have to go back and think about that. So if we could have an ongoing practice or behavior of doing that, yeah, I'll tell you what, I think a lot of people would be way better off when they're trying to illustrate that on their resumes, if they're doing it themselves. So.
Mm. Yeah, and just as a side note, I mean, I know I'm a life coach, but I just do that for like my regular life. Every Sunday, I just sit down and like take inventory of what did I do with my time this week. I had thousands of minutes. How did I spend them? Where could I improve this coming week? And we should be doing that too. By the way, your most valuable resource here is time. It's time. It's not money. I can make more money, right? But I can't make more time. However many days I have is however many days I have. And so really inventorying your time is really, in my opinion, really what is going to set you apart from other people in every aspect of life, not just your resume, not just your career life, but really overall. These accomplishments that you're talking about go far beyond awards at work, and what you were talking about, giving back. When you leave, like how is the world going to know you were here? It's through your time. So one of the things that you also do is business plan development. You help people develop if they want to be their own boss. They want to own their own company. Develop a plan for that. Can you talk a little bit about that and how did you actually get into that? I don't know if I asked you that before.
Well, like everything else, it's just sort of, when you're working on enough things and you're spending enough time, working with companies and with business owners that are looking to transition back into the workforce. So this kind of circled around into individuals who've been in the workforce but are looking to do something more with an idea to go into business. And keep in mind, I don't set up like LLCs, or I don't consult with individuals on any legal matters. What I do is work with them on some kind of a message. If there's an individual out there that's looking to, he's been practicing law for a firm and he wants to open up his own practice. There's an area of litigation that they focus on. I work with individuals to, highlight that. Some strategy for how to promote yourself. And again, Facebook, LinkedIn are great tools for that. But a lot of times people have a hard time trying to, they don't know how to get their message out there. And there's so many different ways that you can do that from networking. I'm very big in Chamber of Commerce's and, Business Network International, grassroots marketing. So I'll spend time with individuals when they're putting their plan together to say, look, spend some money, support your Chamber of Commerce. If there's BNI networks and they're all over the place, get involved with that. Any type of professional networking, get involved with it. You pay a little dues, but so what? It's all tax deductible. But it's really a great way to get your message out there and connect with other people, not just to build your brand, promote your brand, but also to learn from other individuals. I myself, you mentioned something earlier here in the show where, we're always trying to develop professionally, and I'm the same way too. As I tell my clients, pick the brains of individuals who do something similar to what you're doing if you can. I know I do. And, these are things that are going to acquire over time. But the most important thing, again, getting back to when I work with individuals and putting a business plan together, is making sure they got enough working capital to do it. Don't quit your job, until you've actually got a plan in place to where that you could become self-sufficient over a period of time. And getting out there, more importantly, is what's your target audience? Who is it that you're trying to influence? I was involved in multimedia consulting for 15 years. So I spent a great deal of time having to know what audiences are and strategies for how to, increase and maximize your audience reach. And that's what a lot of people don't realize as well. Fish where the fish are. And if your role, meets anyone's needs, then fine. But if you have kind of a niche market in what you do, then I always try to encourage individuals to really study the audience out there and who it's going to impact the most. Because it's, more times than not, individuals don't have a need for your services. So that's really where the planning comes into place, is how to get your message out there and what you do and the kind of audience you're trying to reach.
Wow, I love that. Fish where the fish are.
Fish where the fish are.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah, so I like everything that you're talking about too, which is that you have to have a plan in place. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether or not you're starting a business, by the way, if you want to learn from somebody who's already done it, not just has the theory behind it, right? And so for you, you're talking about how you've taken all of the things that you learned being an employee and then apply them to do it all on your own, to do it your own self, to have your own business, your own companies, and now you're teaching other people. And that's really the right way to do it, right? Is to figure out how to take all of the stuff that you've ever learned in your life, regardless of where you learned it, whether it was in school or the military or through a job, and you're taking it all and you're figuring out how to apply it sustainably to something that you're going to own, that you're going to continue to build, and that can expand exponentially, however big your vision is for it, and however solid your foundation is to support that expansion, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was going to bring up another point, but regardless, I like what you're talking about, where it's you need to know how to do all of that. You need to have I remember talking to people who've already done it and being part of these business organizations. I completely agree. You and I, we're both veterans. We're both part of the VRV, the Veterans Referring Veterans. And Justin, the founder of it, was on this show last week or the week before. And like that stuff is so important. Your connections, the ability, regardless of whether or not you even connect with people, which is like the primary thing really that you get from it, you get to sit underneath people who have actually done the thing that you're asking them a question about. You have the inroad to find out that information without Googling it or without watching a YouTube video and hoping that it's the right thing. You're actually speaking with somebody who's done it, who can help you, figure that out as well. And that is so important. One of the things when I was first starting my business is I didn't know anything about business because I'd only worked for the government. I was in the Army, and then I went to be a civilian, and I still work for the Army. So I never did any type of business. I had a bunch of school and never took any kind of business class at all, ever. And one of the things that I took a course at my local tech school on business, right, and how to write a business plan, and it was for veterans, and I teach that class now, so I'm super into giving back as well. But one of the things that they did is bring in all of the connections that were available. So the Chamber of Commerce in the state of Wisconsin, which is where I did this course, they have a Chamber of Commerce for veteran-owned businesses. And so being aware of the resources that you have, and there's so many people who are trying to give back, who want to help other people, but sometimes you don't even know where to go looking or you didn't know what you don't know. You don't know what's out there if you don't ever look for it. And so, what I love about this whole message is that, you've been there, you've done it your own self. You've helped a bunch of other people do it. And now you're doing it on a bigger scale. More and more and more people are available, like to come underneath your umbrella and to get the help that you offer, which I just love. Can you talk a little bit about, I know we're kind of like going backwards, but one other thing I want to ask you about the Career Maverick. How did you start the podcast? How did you decide that was like a route to go? When somebody is got a business idea, and they are going to do their business, how do they know what the right marketing or getting their name out there, as you were talking about? How do they know what the right method is to do that? And what drew you to Career Maverick?
What's funny is that I get the Career Maverick. The Maverick thing comes from my wife, who, when you're going through and going through like a challenger sales. If you've ever read the book, there's a term called Maverick, and the Maverick is somebody who gets the job done, but sometimes, or a lot of times, they do it in their own way. It's not necessarily conventional, but it works. And you just have folks out there that tend to go off the grid. And in my life, I've always, kind of went off the grid. Has it worked for me? It has. Will it work for other people? Maybe not. But as far as the Maverick mentality, I always thought that either you have it or you don't. So morphing it with the word career, because I'm a career strategist, it just sort of flew. So I have my wife to thank for the Maverick inspiration from there. And actually, she provides a lot of tutelage and insight too. And kind of get off course a little bit. There's nothing wrong with going to your significant other, your spouse, for insight as well. I over the years, she's provided me with a lot of insight in ways to look at things. So, don't discount the fact that the people that are around you all the time, even your kids, could provide a perspective for you that you're like, gee, I never thought about it like that. So, in addition to just,
Yeah,
out there in the business world, just your natural surroundings in your home environment, take cue, because your spouses could provide more insight for you because they see you every day. They know all about your makeup, your dichotomy, and how you are. And, so I've always been blessed to have that too.
I
And
literally just did a video on my YouTube channel maybe a month ago talking about how people do not utilize all of their resources because they're so familiar with
Yep.
the way that the resource is packaged that they overlook it. And so this could be your best friend, this could be your spouse, this could be your children, your pastor, your best friends. It doesn't matter who it is. You are overlooking something that is necessary and vital for you to move forward into your next level, into your next season of life. But you're so familiar with the way that that resource is packaged that you overlook it. And so that's such a good point, Kevin. Thank you for bringing that up.
And one other thing about the podcast really quick too is that there are a lot of sources out there. I like Podbeam. When you're setting this up, and I had went with a different podcast, and then when I got involved with KRDO, we'd set that up through Podbeam. But you want to make sure that your message is being out there. You want to make sure that you got all your links set up, that it links to YouTube, Amazon Alexa. It's really cool is that, and I didn't know this, is that you could just say the Career Maverick on Amazon Alexa, and it'll go into the last show that you did. Apple, the iTunes store, the Android with the Play Store. Make sure your links and you are accessible to that stuff, because a lot of times people aren't going to just type in a long URL. They're just going to go to their Google Play, type in the name, and then boom, find it and subscribe. The other thing is, don't give up after 2 shows. My first season, and again, obviously I have a little help because, I have, producers that I'm working with, and, contracts and things like that. So, I have 3 months where, I'm doing it every week, which is cool. But if you're doing it yourself, you want to, because you don't get a couple of listeners or it's slow going, don't give up on it. Keep putting it out there. And as my wife was telling me the other day, she's like, the more funnier stuff and the more things that are somewhat kind of idiotic, people are drawn to it. So, as much as I try to make it informative, my advice to individuals that are starting out in doing that is you have to be engaging. You got to get people to laugh. It's not always about how informative it is. If you're not making people laugh, get a chuckle out of it. Those are the successful ones out there. So, don't be afraid to say your mind. Keep it clean as you can. And, and don't give up with it. Like they say, just don't do one and then stop. Give it a couple of months. Put some extra effort into it, and make sure that you're letting people know about it, not just through the internet, but now that things are starting to ease up as far as going out and interviewing with people and networking with them, let them know about the show. the face-to-face and all of that has a lot to do with it as well. And, yeah, next time I'll go ahead and I'll check it out. LinkedIn is, again, a great forum for the links to put your shows out there. So, with Facebook and LinkedIn, and when I'm doing a live show, I put it out, and the links they go out automatically every week to to social media outlets. So you get your Tumblr, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and so forth. So really make sure that your outlets are being attached to your program, so that it provides that stream for other individuals to check it out.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And I love that kind of stuff too, which is why I use this platform that we're on right now, where it goes straight away to every place. You don't have to constantly be trying to keep up with it all. It just goes to one place. Well, you set it up one time and then it goes there by its own self,
Yeah.
That's really good. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the summary of the whole thing is regardless of how old you are, how much or how little experience that you have, regardless of the times that we're in, what your goal is possible to achieve if you have the right plan, if you have the right foundation, if you have the right help coming into your life to help you out to make sure that you're on the right path. One of the things, it's funny now when I think about it, but I worked for the government until I was 30. And when I was 30 is when I started to go a different route, right, with entrepreneurship and things like that. But at the time, it was very depressing to me because I felt like I was 30 and starting over, and I was too old to do that.
Oh, you're just beginning.
Isn't that funny? It is. It's just the beginning, and now I feel like I can't wait to see what's gonna be like when I'm 40. Who knows what's gonna happen then? But it's just
Well, you're 50,
or when I'm 50, or when I'm 60, right? And so it's like you're never too old to start over, and it's never too late, so to speak. It's not like, oh, I missed my opportunity because I had children and I stayed at home with them. That has nothing to do with it. And you learned so many skills during that period of time that are really marketable, really valuable outside of your home as well. And that anybody can do that. Anybody has the ability to start over anytime that they want to.
They certainly can. And if you've got the diligence, and again, these things don't fall in people's lap. This certainly didn't fall in my lap to the level that it is right now. I had to, weave that into work. So when I started out, I'm working evenings, I'm working weekends to build it up. But I knew over time that what I was doing was something that I felt that in the future I could take it to a different level. But a lot of times, and I tell folks, don't quit your day job. But this is where the diligence and the persistence, and when they talk about the ownership mentality, well, it's easy to say that when you're working for somebody and pretend like it's your own business. Well, it's not your own business. You didn't put any capital into it. You put the time into it. If you're working commission and you're not getting a commission, you can maybe get a draw or whatever. There's still a revenue source. Once that's all gone away, you're dependent. You got to go out and hustle for a buck, because the only one that's going to get paid is you. And the only way that's going to happen is if you're out there trying to, make it work. Nobody's just going to hand you a check. So very important that even if you are at home and you've been out of the workforce for a while, there are some things in play. And, it doesn't always have to be a full-time job. It could still be there's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur or have ownership in something, in a business, and still do what you're doing during the day. If you're at home and you're taking care of a family and you decide, I work with individuals who, start making pies and cakes, or, they're doing things and they're marketing it. VRV is actually, that has been a great source for ideas for individuals that are, putting things together, manufacturing it and then selling it. I've seen some really, really cool stuff out there. It doesn't always have to be, your full-time passion. But for those that are looking at it, wanting to make it full-time, you definitely got to make sure that, you've got that plan B in place. And then there's all kinds of other factors as far as health insurance and things like that. But, it's the time is the most important thing, and you really have to really craft out that time. And even for somebody that's pretty organized and can sit down on paper and say, okay, I'm going to invest this amount of time in this business today as part of my everyday life. um, it's hard, and that push, and again the initiative to keep on going with it is when my opinion is what people are either going to thrive at, or they're going to wind up quitting and going back to what they were doing.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was talking about. Like, it's best to find the people who've already done it. Find somebody who's doing the thing you want to be doing. Find somebody who has that setup, even if it's not the same career field. Find somebody whose life is set up the way that you want it to be, who has a similar story to what you have, who has the background or the same setup as your life was, right? They were working a 9 to 5 or whatever they were doing, and now they're doing something that you want to be doing. Find somebody like that and sit underneath them, because they have the experience. And I'll tell you too, like, and I'm sure that this was the case for you. I'm sure for most business owners, when I had a very rigid, and I still do, business plan set up. I'm telling you, I've invested way many hours than what was I planned to. I said, okay, 4 hours a day. This is what I'm going to be doing. Monday through Friday, and then I'll invest more on the weekends. No, it was way more than that. Way more. Like exceedingly more of that. Yeah. So find somebody who can like really take a look at what you have going on, what you think is going to be the plan, and ask for real feedback, real live advice on it, because what you think is going to happen might be very, very different than what actually will happen. And that's okay. But sometimes it's better to have that knowledge in your head. Like, okay, instead of having this is all going to take place in a year, maybe it's going to take you 2 years. Maybe it's going to take you a little longer. Nothing wrong with that. You would rather have a solid foundation than have to go back and redo all of the steps many times because you didn't do it right the first time.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And for me, I've been doing it part-time for almost 10 years before I started doing it full-time. So I was building that foundation, as you were saying, to where finally it got to a point to where it was like, okay, I have to give 100%, 110% of everything that I do. And it got to a point to where, I can't do it 50% this way and 50% that way. Over time, you have to make a decision, and that's a good thing to have. But when you reach that point to where, it's starting to consume as much of your time or even more as what you're regularly doing, that's when you built, I think, the foundation to say, okay, now I can take it to the next level. Now I feel confident to take it to the next level, because we still love that safety blanket of a check and insurance, and those things are nice. The hand holding, if you will. And there are a lot of people who are like, gee, you know what? I'm not in a situation to be able to do that. And that's the other thing too. Make sure that your house is in order in terms of your financing. I mean, if you've got kids right now that are getting ready to go off to college, well, gee, is quitting your job and starting a business going to be the most logical thing to do? Maybe not. Or if you have new addition to the family. Everybody's situation is different, but the one thing that people need to remember, sometimes ownership comes out of necessity, but other times, we just decide, hey, we've had enough. And a lot of people are fed up in their jobs and wanting to say, you know what, I'm just going to start doing my own thing. But make sure that it's not going to conflict with your everyday life and the family, that is around you, because, sometimes we have to have work, or we have to have certain benefits and things based on our family situation. So, before you jump into something like that, it's always a good idea to make sure of things like the hidden paycheck, the benefits and so forth. I mean, you have that covered. Or, okay, I can go maybe X amount of time to where I don't have to have it yet, but I will get it. These are factors too that I tell people when they're putting a business plan together to really think about. Because sometimes you just get so fed up with things, you're like, well, I'm going to just quit, do my own thing. Well, great, but just keep in mind, that a lot of this stuff heaps up on you, and at the end of the day, when somebody else isn't, providing you with that, you have to go out and shop around and get it yourself. So it's definitely, and where the foundation comes in to make sure that you have everything in place before you do that. Yeah, it could take years. I mean, it took me 2 years to really say, okay, I want to really focus on this a little bit more before I even decided to do it on my own. Back in the day, I didn't even care, because it was just to get a side gig. I'd get a couple, make a little extra money here and there. Great. But yeah, it got to a point to where I finally had to make a decision to say, do I want to take this to the next level, or do I just want to am I content with just, putting a little putt-putt money in my pocket?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Your professional and your personal lives need to be in alignment with one another. Otherwise, you're house divided. You're going to be working against yourself as you're trying to build something over here. Something else is trying to happen over here. It's not going to work. So I like that message a lot. Even more than that, all of you should be in agreement, right? Your body, soul, and spirit should all be in agreement before you start trying to build something and market that to other people, because what you're putting out is what people are going to receive. If there's a part of you that's not there, they're receiving it. They're getting that. They're only getting part of what you're putting out. So I like what you're saying, Kevin. Thank you so much for that. Kevin, can you tell us a little bit? I know all of your links are in the description of this video. However you're watching, you're going to find all of the links to find out about you and Resumedics. But can you tell us just really quick about how people can get in contact with you, services that you offer? Can you kind of just quick give people a little bit of that?
Well, they can type in Resumedics on any search, and it won't be hard to find. If you type it in, again, I've got a portal for the Midwest. I got one for Colorado. So by just typing that in, my email, my first and last name @gmail.com, all one word, is the way somebody can reach out to me as well. But usually I just tell folks, if you just Google either my name or just Google in Resumedics, all my information will pop up on there. The Career Maverick pops up on there. You could go onto the Facebook page and look up Resumedics as well. I just tell people to go onto Google, type in Resumedics, and boom, there you go. It's got all the web links on there and everything they can need to reach out. They can go on the website. They could check out, what I'm all about, services, the investment options that are available, and so forth. So, that's usually the best advice I can give somebody. So again, by name, I'm not hard to find. And that's the way it should be, in a positive way.
Before we end, I want to talk about that. We were talking about this before we got on the live stream, which is something that maybe people are struggling with. And I'm interested to get your take on this, if we can just take a little bit more of your time, which is personal and professional lives. How you got social media, right? Everybody's on social media these days. What's the appropriate way to be handling social media when you're a professional, when you're starting your own business, when you are maybe even already now a business owner? How do you keep professional and personal stuff separate? Is there such a thing as separating the two? What's your advice?
Well, have a business name. Like for Facebook, I have my Kevin Kokinda, and then I have a Resumedics Facebook page. So having 2 pages really helps. One is, again, business related. The other one is obviously personal. So with the Resumedics page, I'm putting things out there. I really like to put things out there that are informational. Sometimes back when I started, I would, put things out there, I'm offering, this service for this kind of a price. And for a lot of businesses, they have to put something out there. But what I found over time was I didn't need to have to promote my business and say, hey, I'm having a sale, buy 2, get 1 free. I switch it up to make it more informative and provide tools like the show, like Career Maverick, the links. So about everything I put on a personal, even my personal page anymore, I keep it more business relevant and and make it to where it's informative. I always want to be helping people. I always want it to be educational, because I find that the more informational stuff you put out there, people will generally say, well, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. I'm going to look him up and I'm going to inquire about his services. So even with LinkedIn, I tell people, don't try to sell your product online. And I know people are like, well, online, that's what it's all about. Go to Facebook Marketplace, sell your furniture online. That's a great tool. What I always try to tell people is that if you try to cram your product down their throat, they get turned off by it. But if you can provide an educational tool, something that's informative, and it's really easy for me because, information and education and looking for a new job or a career is important. When you can throw some tidbits out there, people, they take notice in that. And if they do need your help, now you're positioning yourself again as somebody that is, experienced, know what they're talking about. And at the end of the day, we want to work with people that know what they're doing, right? We don't want to invest our hard-earned money into something that somebody doesn't have a lot of experience in. You wind up with a bad taste in your mouth. So it's very important to keep learning and to keep developing professionally, something that you touched on earlier as well. When you keep doing that and you're sharing that knowledge, you're getting the word out. I get people that, maybe saw something a few months ago and it sticks in their head, whether it's a show, whether it's an interview or whatever. But when you can really present yourself in a way to where, yeah, this person can help me, that's the most important thing. It's not always about shoving it right down their throat. There's different tactics for that based on the kind of business that you're doing. If you're in retail or you're selling food, well then, yeah, you're putting that stuff out there. But if you're a business that's in what your goal is to provide services, then again, even helpful videos and tips and things like that, or trends in issues that people are having, just bringing that to the forefront, like kind of what we're doing now is an important part of branding yourself and promoting your business. So they work hand in hand, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And going back to what you were saying about the podcast too, where you said, like, if you put out one episode and people don't subscribe, like, don't give up, and that's so important. I started this YouTube channel 18 months ago, and I really didn't want to do it. I felt like a lot of internal anxiety about it, and I'm so glad I did now.
Totally get it.
It's got almost 5,000 subscribers on it. People are getting something from the channel that the world was missing beforehand. You have to know that that's your value of something, right? You have to know that you carry that and you're willing to put it out. And lots of people. So by the way, when I decided to continue with the YouTube channel, YouTube is besides word of mouth, YouTube is the #1 way that people find me and hire me to be their coach, because they look at my videos, I'm assuming, and say, like, this person knows what they're talking about, or they feel like they connect with you some way. And that's it's so important. It's so important that you just share your knowledge. You just share part of yourself, and people will be drawn to that. You will attract what you are. And so it's really important people know what they carry. I have one question. Well, just really like a comment, really. This is actually a personal friend of mine. His name is Kel. He's an Air Force veteran. He retired after 23 years, just retired last year or the year before. He says, these are the challenges I face. 23 plus years of excellent experience, but I only have a bachelor's degree. Most companies are wanting me to start at beginning pay scales, so I'm starting my MBA tomorrow. Do you have any comments on that, Kevin? What do you think about that?
Well, I always look at, again, when I'm transitioning or helping veterans, in the Air Force, I think of avionics, I think of aerospace, depending on what it is that you did while you were serving, is critical. But, as far as the MBA or an advanced degree, I always look at the certifications that are out there. If you've been involved with, say, computer software, information technology, or whatever, and you get out, you find that you have to earn certain certifications. So nothing wrong with getting, an advanced degree. But the one thing that I always encourage, and over at Mount Carmel, they got a great program here in the Springs where they actually, if you're wanting to get into a role like cybersecurity or something like that, they actually have certification courses at CISSP where you can go in and get these certifications. So, as you're transitioning, check out the kind of resources that are out there, because a lot of these roles won't hire you unless you're licensed or certified in something in particular. And, obviously too, if you're going into a federal role or whatever, obviously it's going to help your GS rating, when you've got that, military career experience, and that can propel you as well. But, take advantage of any certifications that are out there that may be applicable to what it is that you're doing. The number one thing that's frustrating is that, you're in the Navy and you're a welder, and you've been welding, you've been doing all these years, and then all of a sudden you find out you get out and it's like, but you just can't, if the job requires, it's a union shop, it doesn't matter how many years you spent in the military, you're going to have to go through the apprentice training and all of that, through the union, which is ridiculous if you've been, working all these years, and then you got to find yourself going back into, square one again. But the reality of it is that, in the private sector, there are, protocol, standard certifications, things that you still have to have that just your military experience doesn't translate. So, I always tell, individuals who are getting ready to get out or have just recently, gotten out, to check into that and see what's available. Here in the Springs, we're very fortunate that, with having 5, military bases, there's also a plethora of resources to help veterans, probably more than I've seen anywhere else in the United States. So, but a lot of places don't have that, unfortunately. So it's really important to try to seek out, the organizations, wherever they're at, and take advantage of that as well, because, again, sometimes it's not so much effort you're putting into one thing, and then you're still having to turn around and get, certified in something else.
That's a great point. I know that was a problem for a lot of Army medics, was that they were doing, well beyond paramedic stuff when they were in the military, and then they would get out and they wouldn't have the qualifications. They couldn't get hired anywhere, even though they've been doing much more advanced medical procedures on people, overseas deployed than would be required to have a paramedic certification. But because they didn't have that, they couldn't get hired. They just literally couldn't. The city could not legally hire them. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a great point what you're bringing up, which is that sometimes it's not the degree necessarily, it's the qualification, it's a certification that you need in order to do your craft when you, as a civilian, as opposed to being a military person. And yeah, you're right. The Springs has tons of resources for vets. So that's a great point too, to know your landscape, right? The geography of where you're living and the resources that a place offers uniquely is a good point there. What do you think about like something like that though? I mean, for Kel's specific situation, I kind of feel like sometimes we're put into places where like it's a rock and a hard place on purpose. Like sometimes it's just to see like what are you going to do in this situation, where you might already have everything that you need, but it has to like be pulled out, and so sometimes you're in this hard place of wondering what to do to make something that's already in you but make it manifest outside of you. So I don't know if you agree with that, or if you're like, no, you just have to go with the flow and go get whatever it is that you need to start a career, a new career. How do you feel about that?
Well, I always felt that, there's two sides to this. There's a situation where, based on maybe your circumstances, I'll give you an example, family business. Maybe it was something that you weren't really, too keen on being involved with, but over time you realize that, okay, this might be the natural progression, is that dad's wanting to hang it up and wanting me to take over the business. Okay, well, there's a structure in place. The issue is whether or not you can, build up your ability and mindset to be able to, do as well or better than what your dad did. Unfortunately, I run into a lot of situations where that's not the case. Kids take over the business, they run it into the ground. They don't know what they're doing. But a lot of times, deep down inside, they just don't have the passion for it like their parents do. And I don't speak for every business owner in this situation, but the ones that I tend to work with from time to time, that seems to be the case. The other side of this is that, when you get out, like when I got out, I still didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew that before going in, I had no direction. When I got out, I really didn't have much of a direction either. The only direction I knew was I wanted to get college money. I wanted to make sure that I was going to school, and and things kind of develop as they go along. But there's a certain makeup that we have that we know that we thrive in. Some people, they are more skilled in computers. Their mechanical or electrical acumen is very high. I'm not very good at many things. In fact, I suck at probably 90% of the stuff that I do. But the one thing that I thrive at is I can write and I can consult. That's what I've been put here for. I can barely add, 2 plus 2. But so to me, I think we know deep down inside where our strengths and weaknesses are, how we want to proceed further with that. Again, I knew I was never going to be an accountant. I knew I was never going to be an engineer. Again, I barely do remedial algebra, but I always thrived as a writer. I always thrived in English composition. I was even a thespian for a while in high school. So, there are just certain things in your toolbox that you know how to use better than the other tools. And, you know, if you can recognize that and build on that, that's fine. But the reality of it is that sometimes people are in a situation where, well, I have to do this and I have to do that because right now it's the easiest and the most logical path for me to go down. So and so got me a job at this company or this factory or whatever. It pays pretty well, and I have a family. And well, sometimes that's the direction that you have to go, even though you don't want to. But you also realize that you still have a commitment to others. So really depending on the situation that you're in. I didn't come from a family-run business, so there was no empire for me to take over. If I wanted to build an empire, then I was pretty much on my own. But it's really the situation. It really just depends on you know what your foundation is and what your background is, and that's where you're going to find yourself either rebranding yourself or just you know getting in the driver's seat and just taking over something else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Sometimes there is just times where it's like, no, you just have to do something because you have commitments to other people, especially if you have children. They didn't ask to come here, so you got to take care of those babies. But other times I feel like what you were talking about where recognizing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses, like I hire out my weaknesses. I am not going to be the world's greatest graphic designer. I have no intention of ever doing that. My assistant, she's 10 years younger than me on purpose for that. I know that I don't know social media as well as she does. I am happy to outsource that. I don't want to really spend my time doing that. I'm going to play to my strengths. I'm going to invest time developing my strengths because I want to be the best at that, because I know that is my gifting. I know that is my purpose. That's what I'm here to do. And I want to be the best at that. I'm not trying to be mediocre at a whole bunch of other stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be a mediocre social media manager. So I think that what you're talking about is really good. Know your strengths and play to those. And that is going to increase your confidence, which we talked about before, so much more. When like there's what you were talking about. There's nothing that can replace that, where you can walk into a room and be the expert or be on a panel of experts in the room on a situation. That's where you should play to that strength, not trying to be all things to all people. You're not that.
Sometimes the hardest thing in the world to do is delegate. And for those who are, they have more of a controlling personality. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this. I am horrible at this, to where I want to do everything. My wife and I, we were just talking about this the other day. She's like, you need to get like an assistant or somebody, because you try to take on, and I do have individuals that help me out, and contractors and so forth. But yeah, sometimes, we're so absorbed in wanting to make sure that it's done the right way, and who could do it better than yourself, right? That, we don't step aside and say, I should probably delegate this to somebody. And like you were saying, Angel, you could, deflect to somebody that's maybe younger, but they also have that younger mindset and audience that, you're trying to reach. And who better to do that than somebody that's already living and breathing in that demographic already. But yeah, I definitely would be a hypocrite if I said, you know, you know, trying to weed my stuff out and have other people do it. But yes, I fall into that same boat, and it's hard to delegate. But when you can do that properly, not only was that transition into being a business owner, but also as a leader in a professional world, you're a project manager, or you're leading teams. You have to learn how to delegate, and emotional intelligence is plays a huge role in this as well, in trying to manage somebody or delegate that authority, because not everybody's going to be the same. So you have to delegate it in a way that you're going to get the most maximum output out of an individual. So there's factors that go into that as well. It's very hard to delegate, but yes, it is definitely necessary in this day and age. You don't know what you're doing.
Whoops. Yeah, one of the things that is funny, I learned quickly on, was that I was really bad at social media. And so I really, that was like how this whole thing started. Was I was just like, no, I recognize that this is not my strength. I'm just going to get rid of it right away. And I feel like because I was willing to kind of give up the reins on that immediately, like it really early on into starting businesses, it was freeing up my need to control all of the things. And so it was like, oh, I've already delegated something and it worked out fine for me, so I'll let go of other things. But it is when it's yours and it's your name, and people are associating everything that comes out of it. Now, one thing I did learn is that I never give up my voice. So even in emails to people, if my assistant is going to send an email like I'm super busy or I'm on vacation or something, she always says, this is from Sarah, Angel's assistant. This isn't Angel responding, something like that, where it's very clear that that isn't me communicating to the person. And also, like, again, doing the YouTube and stuff like that, I recognize that that's where my strength is. I'm going to spend more time doing that and less time doing other things. And so for me anyway, that was one of the things that I'm glad happened early on, where I didn't feel the need to control all of the things, because I had given up part of it super early on, like within a couple of months of starting. So it was easier that way.
Yep. And in my role, you're a consultant. They want to work with you. They're not reaching out to Resumedics to, pawn it off to somebody else, or say, I have an associate who specializes in IT, or I have one who specializes in engineering. At Resumedics, there are facets of it that I have a team that works with me on. But as far as the consulting, as far as, the rewriting of it, and all that insight, yeah, that's 100% my name on it. If I had somebody who was going to come on and do what I do, I mean, they would literally have to do it verbatim how I would do it. I mean, literally, there's um, a blueprint for how it is going to be done. We don't deviate. I don't want you putting your ideas into it. So there's where the controlling factor kind of comes into play, because when people are working with you, there's nothing wrong with having people out there help you with the research, but at the end of the day, they want to know that who's ever working on this product, it's you, because that's what they want. They want you. They want the expert. So I really try to make sure that, although I'm growing, that as far as the consulting and things like that, I never deflect to somebody else. Now, If I had somebody that I sense is having an issue and it's more personal and not business or career orientated, then I'll stop myself and I'll say, you probably should deflect to a life coach like yourself, or a wellness coach, or somebody that can help you, because there's more underlying things that are involved here that are affecting your career. But when you get into that kind of a root cause, then I have to deflect to a professional like yourself to help them. Because as I tell them, I'm a career coach, career strategist, but what I'm not is I'm not a licensed social worker. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I'm not certified in wellness coaching or life coaching. So I pretty much stick to what I know, and I'll deflect to an expert in something like that. But again, anything that's career related, job related, then yes, you're going to get 100% me.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Well, do you have anything else that you want to say before we close out today? Thank you so much for your time. We've been on here for about 90 minutes, just over 90 minutes now. So I really appreciate your time and all of your expertise that you've been willing to share with myself, with the audience here today. Thank you so much, Kevin. Do you have anything that we missed that you want to talk about before we go?
Well, I just want to say thanks again for having me on today. I hope everything that I said, that, it doesn't have to be all of it, but I always leave folks with, if there's a snippet or something, kind of a takeaway that you can get from this, then that's good. If you have questions about anything, you can just reach out to me at kevinkokinda@gmail.com. You could just go on to localresumewritingsite.com. You can just type in Resumedics online if you want, and find my information that way. But again, walking away with something, is better than nothing. And that's the one thing that I always tell my clients. If what I say to you has helped you become better at your job, or if it has contributed to, landing a job that you've always wanted to, then, that's the most gratifying thing in the world. And you can't put a dollar amount on that. So that's what I will leave with everybody. And, again, feel free to reach out to me if they have any other questions.
Yeah, exactly. Please do go follow Kevin on Instagram, on Facebook. Go subscribe to his podcast, Career Maverick. Reach out to him if you have any questions. If you guys are looking to switch careers, if you're looking to re-enter the workforce, or just entering the workforce, whatever your need is, please reach out to him. He has so much information, so much knowledge, especially with LinkedIn. If you're starting a LinkedIn profile, he does reviews of those as well to make sure that everything is in order, not just your resume, but your LinkedIn profile as well. So reach out to him. He has a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, as I said. And Kevin, thank you so much for being on again. I appreciate it so much. And you guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you. I think the next interview is it's either this Monday or it's next Friday. But so check on my YouTube channel to find out when that next one is. And thank you again for coming on, Kevin.
Oh, thank you for having me, Angel.